Breaking news. The European Union slams China with sweeping new tariffs, igniting fears of a global trade war. The headlines flashed across screens worldwide this morning. The EU, long seen as a cautious trading bloc, has finally pulled the trigger. Heavy tariffs now hit key Chinese imports, electric vehicles, microchips, and more. This is a seismic shift, signaling a dramatic escalation in the economic standoff between West and East. The world is holding its breath. These are not surgical strikes, they target sectors vital to China's economic future. The EU's message, the era of unfettered access to European markets, allegedly fueled by unfair state subsidies, is over. The bloc is drawing a line in the sand, opening a new, uncertain chapter in geopolitics. This is more than a trade dispute. It's a declaration of economic sovereignty. EU leaders argue that massive Chinese subsidies allow goods to be sold in Europe at prices local manufacturers can't match. The question now, how will China react? And how will this reshape the global economic order? Stock markets from Frankfurt to Shanghai shuddered. The euro fluctuated. For ordinary citizens, the implications are just beginning to sink in. The cost of everything from cars to smartphones could change. The trade war, once distant, has arrived on Europe's doorstep. The decision was unveiled in the pre-dawn chill of Brussels. Inside the Berlaymont building, tension filled the air as aides rushed through hallways, clutching briefing documents. Security was tight. The EU was on the verge of a historic announcement. The atmosphere was one of grim resolve. Leaders knew the weight of their decision. They were charting a new, confrontational course for the EU. In the press room, journalists from around the globe waited in heavy silence. The EU's top trade officials walked to the podium, faces stern. The lead commissioner laid out the new tariffs: electric vehicles, solar panels, wind turbines, medical equipment. Each item represented a strategic battleground. This was not a negotiation, but a unilateral declaration. The announcement projected unity and strength, masking the intense internal debate that preceded it. Some member states pushed for aggressive action. Others urged caution. The final policy was a hard-won compromise. As the press conference ended, a new reality set in. The words spoken would ripple outwards, affecting workers, businesses, and startups across Europe. The policy was no longer abstract. It was a real-world force with tangible consequences. The early morning in Brussels marked the end of one era and the uncertain beginning of another. The world watched to see what would come next. These tariffs are not an isolated act of frustration. They're part of a larger strategic shift, de-risking, not decoupling. For years, Europe relied on globalized trade, with China as an indispensable partner. But the pandemic and Russia's invasion of Ukraine exposed deep vulnerabilities. Over-reliance on any single country, especially a strategic rival, is now seen as a critical threat. The new tariffs are a tool to rebalance, reduce dependency, and ensure Europe's economic security. This doctrine, strategic autonomy, means building up Europe's own industrial capacity. The tariffs shield fledgling industries, giving them room to grow against heavily subsidized Chinese giants. The goal: ensure the next generation of green tech and digital infrastructure is made in Europe. EU policymakers insist they're not shutting China out, but creating a fairer playing field. The tariffs are just the opening move in a long and complex game. To understand the EU's drastic step, look to Europe's industrial heartlands. Steel mills, automotive plants, and solar panel factories have struggled for years against a flood of low-cost Chinese imports. Factory managers point to massive subsidies and state-backed loans that make Chinese products unbeatable on price. The result? A slow hollowing out of European manufacturing, with job losses and community decline. The social fabric of these regions has been torn, fueling resentment and the rise of populist movements. The EU's tariffs are a direct response to this discontent. Consider the solar panel industry, once a European strength, now dominated by China. European innovators have downsized or disappeared. The irony: Europe's green transition depends on its chief economic rival. The tariffs are a desperate attempt to level the playing field and revive Europe's industrial heartbeat. Amid global criticism and Chinese anger, EU officials frame their actions as defensive. The official narrative: this is a shield, not a sword. The EU says it pursued dialogue for years, urging China to play by WTO rules, but the trade deficit ballooned and unfair practices intensified. The core argument: European companies face strict regulations and high costs, while Chinese firms benefit from state support. The tariffs, they argue, are not protectionism, but a fairness correction. Anti-subsidy investigations uncovered overwhelming evidence of state support for Chinese firms. Tariffs are calibrated based on these findings. By rooting their actions in legal processes, EU leaders hope to show the policy is measured and evidence-based. The message? Europe remains open to trade, but it must be fair. For Brussels, this is self-preservation, not aggression. Beijing's reaction was swift: outrage, defiance, and threats. Chinese state media called the EU's move naked protectionism. The Ministry of Commerce accused Brussels of suppressing Chinese companies. China vowed to defend its interests and sees the tariffs as part of a broader Western strategy to contain its rise. The threat of retaliation is real. China could target iconic European products or restrict market access. China's dominance in critical raw materials, like rare earths, gives it powerful leverage. Beijing has already used export controls as a geopolitical weapon. A further tightening could send shockwaves through Europe's high-tech and defense industries. The EU has thrown a punch. Beijing is preparing to punch back. The world braces for escalation. To grasp the stakes, listen to people like Klaus, a mechanic in Bavaria. For 40 years, Klaus has watched his factory lose contracts to overseas competitors offering impossibly low prices. "We make the best gears in the world," he says, "but quality doesn't seem to matter, just price." Layoffs have chipped away at the workforce. The factory floor is quiet. Klaus worries about the future, not just for himself, but for his children. His son chose software over the factory, seeing no future there. "What happens when we don't make things anymore?" Klaus asks. His story is a microcosm of a larger trend: skills becoming obsolete, pride eroded, a way of life slipping away. When asked about the new tariffs, Klaus feels a sense of validation. It's about time. Maybe now Brussels is listening. He's not sure it will save the factory, but at least someone is fighting. For Klaus and millions like him, these tariffs are about survival. They're not about geopolitics, they're about being seen. The human cost of competition is real, and the stakes are personal. The EU's bold move is a high-stakes gamble. The biggest risk, a tit-for-tat trade war with China. Retaliatory tariffs could spiral, harming both economies and disrupting global trade. European businesses relying on Chinese components could see costs skyrocket. Companies invested in China might be shut out. The domino effect: lower profits, reduced investment, job losses. For consumers, tariffs mean higher prices on cars, solar panels, smartphones. The policy designed to protect jobs could squeeze household budgets and fuel inflation. Beyond economics, global supply chains could be thrown into chaos. A single missing component could halt production across Europe. Rerouting supply chains is costly and slow, creating prolonged uncertainty. The risks are immense, and the outcome is far from certain. We are at a historic crossroads. The EU's tariffs challenge the post-Cold War consensus on globalization. For decades, the belief was that more trade meant more prosperity and peace. Now, national security and resilience are taking precedence over efficiency. The debate within Europe is fierce. Are tariffs a lifeline or a dangerous path? Some argue for protection. Others say invest in innovation and outcompete rivals. The impact will be felt differently. Factory workers, tech entrepreneurs, consumers, and governments all face tough trade-offs. The old rules of global trade are being rewritten. The relationship between economic powers is shifting from cooperation to competition. This is just the beginning of a new, uncertain chapter. The choices made in Brussels, Beijing, and Washington will shape the future. The global economy and the world hangs in the balance. The next moves will define the 21st century.